We are here to help. Please remain calm, and we will get to everyone.
Imagine a place declared safe by the world, a sanctuary under the watchful gaze of the United Nations. You are told you are protected, your family is safe. And then, in a matter of days, thousands of the men and boys from that very place are simply gone, massacred. How does something like that happen? How does the world let it happen? My curiosity led me into the tangled history of the Bosnian War, the incredibly complex breakup of Yugoslavia in the early 1990s. As I delved deeper, one name kept surfacing, a stark, dark mark on the map, on history itself, and on the very idea of international protection: Srebrenica. This small town, nestled in the valleys and hills of eastern Bosnia, would become a symbol of something horrific, a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for cruelty and the world's capacity for failure. Bosnia in the early 90s was a tinderbox ignited by the fracturing of Yugoslavia. Ethnic tensions, long suppressed under communist rule, exploded into brutal violence. Serbs, Croats, Bosniaks, people who had lived side by side for generations, neighbors, friends, even family, turned on each other with terrifying speed and ferocity. The Serbian Serbs, supported by Serbia, embarked on a campaign of what international courts would later define as ethnic cleansing. Their goal was to create a larger Serb state, and they targeted Bosniaks, Bosnian Muslims and Croats, driving them from their homes, besieging towns, and committing atrocities. Srebrenica became one of these besieged towns, isolated, surrounded by hostile Bosnian Serb forces. As the conflict raged, thousands of Bosniaks from surrounding villages and countryside fled to Srebrenica, seeking refuge within its perceived safety. The town's population swelled dramatically, with people living in desperate conditions, facing starvation and constant shelling. In 1993, in an effort to protect civilians trapped in several enclaves, the United Nations declared Srebrenica, along with a few other besieged towns, a safe area. This was supposed to be it, a place where the fighting would stop, where civilians would be shielded from the violence by UN peacekeepers. A small contingent of Dutch soldiers, known as Dutchbat, was deployed to Srebrenica. They were lightly armed, given a mandate to protect the area, but explicitly not to engage in combat that would escalate the situation. It was a promise, a thin blue line drawn on a map meant to hold back the tide of war. But the siege didn't end. The Serbian Serb forces, led by their formidable and ruthless commander, General Ratko Mladić, tightened their grip around the enclave. Supplies were scarce, humanitarian aid was often blocked, and hope dwindled with each passing day. The thin blue line felt increasingly fragile. And then, in July 1995, the inevitable happened. The Serbian Serb army launched a full-scale offensive against the Srebrenica enclave. They overwhelmed the lightly armed Dutch peacekeepers who were caught in an impossible situation, facing an army equipped with tanks, artillery, and determined infantry. The safe area, the promised sanctuary, began to crumble with terrifying speed. As the Serb forces advanced, thousands upon thousands of Bosniaks, estimates range up to 25,000 or more, flocked toward the UN base in Potočari, just outside Srebrenica, clinging to the hope that the peacekeepers could protect them. But the base was small. It couldn't possibly accommodate everyone. The scene was of utter chaos and desperation. And then General Mladić arrived. I've seen the chilling footage. There he is, walking among the terrified crowd gathered at Potočari, seemingly calm, even paternalistic. Through a megaphone, he assured the frightened Bosniak civilians that everything would be all right, that they would be safely transported out of the area. It was a monstrous lie, delivered with a veneer of calm authority. And this is where the darkness truly descends, where the promise of safety dissolved into systematic extermination. Under the watchful eyes of Mladić's soldiers, and with the peacekeepers tragically unable to intervene effectively, the Bosniak women, children, and elderly were separated from the men and boys. They were put onto buses and forcibly removed from the area, transported to Bosnian government-held territory. But the men and boys, their fate was horrifyingly different. They were separated, ostensibly for questioning about war crimes, or simply lined up, their faces etched with fear and confusion. Many, sensing the imminent danger, made a desperate, perilous attempt to escape through the dense woods and mountains, a treacherous trek towards Tuzla, miles away through enemy territory, facing ambushes, minefields, and exhaustion. Thousands perished on that desperate march, hunted down or succumbing to the elements. Those who remained at Potočari, or who were captured during the escape attempt, were systematically rounded up. They were taken to various execution sites in and around Srebrenica, schools, warehouses, farms, fields. And then the systematic killing began. Executions, often by firing squad, day after day for several days. Over 8,000 men and boys in just a few days in July 1995. Think about that number, 8,000, each one a human being, a son, a brother, a father, a neighbor, systematically murdered simply because of who they were, because they were Bosniak men and boys in Srebrenica. The sheer scale of the slaughter is staggering. The speed is terrifying. This was not random violence born of battlefield chaos. This was planned, organized, industrialized killing. And the international community, which had promised protection, failed catastrophically. The UN peacekeepers, outmanned, under-resourced, and bound by restrictive rules of engagement that prevented them from using force aggressively, could only stand by and watch, or in some tragic instances were even coerced into cooperating with the separation of victims. This was not just a war crime, it was something far more profound and devastating. International courts, after years of painstaking work gathering evidence from hundreds of exhumed mass graves, from survivor testimonies, from intercepted military communications, ruled unequivocally that what happened in Srebrenica was genocide, a deliberate, organized act to destroy a significant part of a specific group of people. It was the worst single atrocity committed on European soil since the Holocaust. And the grim aftermath doesn't end with the court rulings. The legacy of Srebrenica is a painful, ongoing journey. It involves the agonizing process of exhuming mass graves, identifying bodies often found in pieces, using DNA analysis to give names back to the bones. It is the perpetual heartbreaking search for loved ones that continues even today for many families. And it is the persistent, corrosive presence of denial. Despite the overwhelming evidence, despite the rulings of international courts, there are still those who deny that the Srebrenica genocide happened, who minimize the numbers, who twist the facts, who call it something else entirely. This denial is not just an insult to the victims and survivors, it poisons the possibility of true reconciliation and healing in the region. So, How does a promised sanctuary become a killing field? It is a story woven from threads of ethnic hatred weaponized for political gain, of military ruthlessness unchecked, and a profound, devastating international failure to protect those it had promised to save. Srebrenica stands as a chilling reminder that words like safe area or protection are meaningless, utterly hollow, without the genuine political will and the necessary means, the troops, the mandate, the willingness to use force if required to defend them. And it leaves you with a lingering, troubling question. In a world where such promises are still made to vulnerable populations, how can we ever truly ensure that they are kept and that Srebrenica, in its horrific specificity, never happens again?
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more history daily.